All right, so tonight's homework's on characters' motives and how they promote the theme. So specifically looking at how to identify the theme and help you with the theme paragraph for expert on our next proficiency. So at the end of this presentation, you'll have a better idea on how you can write the expert paragraph on characters' motives and how they promote the theme. So for this particular page, you'll see that the pencil is in the top right-hand corner. I only need you to write on the stuff that's not in the box. So the stuff in the box you do not need to write. It's just examples so that I can better explain myself. So how should you find theme? Well, what is theme? Basically, it's the lesson you need to learn from the story or the author's message. So remember how in last week's video, science fiction or key elements of science fiction, we talked about how the author is specifically trying to make a comment about the world around them and what's happening. So that's why we gave you all that historical context so you can think back to what was happening during the time period and figure out, what the author's message really is in the story. So you as the reader have to infer, and infer means to read between the lines to find the theme. The author does not state the theme in the text of the story. You have to be a super sleuth or a spy to figure it out. Themes are generally bigger than the story itself, so you have to think more like real-world advice, which I'll talk about in a minute. So here's an example. Tim hated his old baseball glove. He wanted to play with a new glove, but he didn't have any money, so he decided to steal it. But when Tim got caught stealing the glove, his parents said he couldn't play baseball all summer. So some people might say that the theme of this is to not steal. But it's actually bigger than that, and it needs to be something that's more real-world advice. And while, it is advice, don't steal, that's just common knowledge. It means you're comprehending the story, but you're not digging deeper. So I'm asking you to kind of go to a higher order of thinking for this. So you need to think something more like, if you want something in life, you should really work for it. He didn't have any money, so he should have worked for the money and got it the proper way instead of stealing. It's not just about stealing. It's a little bit more than that. So that's just an example. Again, the stuff in the box you do not have to write in your notes. So identifying themes. You need to remember they're not explicitly stated. They're not clearly stated. It's not like the author comes out in the middle of the text and says, oh, by the way, the theme of the story is this. They're often implied. You have to read between the lines to figure them out. And they really are bigger than the story. So the story is the small world. You need to think big world, the big world of the theme, and it applies to the real world. So it's not just about what's happening in the story. It's about the bigger picture. So again, thinking about our rain, rain, go away example. It's not about aliens are made of sugar. It's not about aliens might melt in the rain. It's bigger than that. It's real world advice. So instead, we kind of took it from looking at, the historical context of the time period. We talked about this today in class or on Monday. And in Rain, Rain, Go Away, the bigger picture is, the idea of questioning the world around you, paying attention to the world around you, and historical context of the time period definitely supports that idea. The author was definitely, giving us a message or advice about that particular topic. So, like I said, in order to find the theme in Rain, Rain, Go Away, what we needed to do was look at our topic sentence in the mastery paragraph. And if we use the name it, verb it, big picture strategy, which we did, then you should have seen something along the lines of, questioning the world around you, paying attention to your neighbor, the keeping up with the Joneses mentality. So, again, if you're looking at that, the big picture part theoretically should be something about the theme. I mean, that's you're looking at the bigger picture, the real world advice there. So the next step would be to go back to the front side and see if there's anything in the motivation column that explains that big picture. So helps support that particular part. And for most classes, we did write something about Lillian spying on her neighbors or asking questions or just generally being nosy and paying attention to the odd behavior that her neighbors were showing. You do not need to write this part down. This is just going back to our Hunger Games example. So if we used a mastery topic sentence that said the novel The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins explores the concept of protecting your loved ones at all costs. Now clearly there are, so we're saying that the protecting your loved ones at all costs is the theme, but I do want to make sure that you understand there are a lot more themes you could pull from this novel, especially about the government, utopia, dystopia life. But for now, I'm just focusing on this particular idea, especially because the motivation of Katniss volunteering as tribute supports this concept, because she's trying to support Prim and to save her so that she doesn't have to go into the games. So we do have support. Bottom line, we can look at the motivation behind Katniss volunteering to help us support this particular theme. Again, there's lots of other themes that we could choose from, but this is an example I used in the other videos, so I'm just kind of sticking with it. And again, you don't have to write anything on this page. I'm just, again, trying to give you another example. So, structure of the theme paragraph. First, you need to state the title of the story you're discussing and the theme that you've decided to settle on. Really, honestly, explicitly stated. I think the theme of this story is, well, you don't need to do I think. Just do the theme of this story. By saying I think or I feel, you're being redundant. So stick with just the theme, you know, specifically state it. Step 2, try and figure out the character motivation that supports this idea and explain that from the story. And in a sentence or two, maybe explain how the story relates to this theme. Not a full summary. It needs to really be short. A sentence or two is good enough. And I do believe that steps 2 and 3 could be interchangeable. You might want to feel like you want to give a little bit of an example of the story before you go into the character motivation. But bottom line, the paragraph needs to flow and make sense while explaining your understanding of this real world advice from the story and how the character's motivation supports it. So take notes on all of this, step 1, 2, and 3, and also the fact that it can be interchangeable and the paragraph needs to make sense. All right, you're finished for now. So don't forget to go back to your notes and write down your summary and question. A lot of you are forgetting to do this step, so please remember to go back and do the summary and the question. And I'll see you in class tomorrow.